Forests are important and vital to life on this planet. They provide water to cities and agriculture. They are the lungs of our planet and generate numerous environmental services. Forests also preserve a great wealth of the Earth's biodiversity. By capturing carbon, forests can serve as a front line in mitigating global climate change. But all of these benefits are in peril because around the world, forests are currently threatened by deforestation, general degradation, and other serious problems. In this e-learning video course, Institute for Global Environmental Strategy's senior researcher, Federico Lopez Casero, will talk about the importance of good governance in forest management. You will learn how local communities and countries alike can promote good governance and forest conservation by developing a quality of governance standard. And this course will guide you through a multi-stakeholder and multi-step approach to develop this standard.
Because forests are both important and threatened, there are many international and national initiatives to conserve forests and ensure their sustainable management. An important international initiative, known as Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation, provides funds to forest managers who conserve their forests and contribute to stabilizing the global climate through the carbon these forests capture and store. REDD+ builds upon national policies to conserve forests. For example, in Nepal, the conservation and management of the forests was handed over to local communities organized in community forest user groups. Poor governance in the management of forests is widely recognized as a major root cause of deforestation and forest degradation around the world. Governance in the forest sector refers to the rules and arrangements that guide stakeholders in decision-making and oversee their use and management of forests. Poor forest governance can have a devastating effect on the forest and the local communities who depend on them. It can take various forms, including low levels of transparency, accountability, participation, fairness, and effectiveness. It can lead to conflict over forest resources, capture of benefits by elites, and corruption, which is particularly related to illegal logging, organized crime, and the misallocation of forest use rights. The denial of access to forests and forest resources can result in poverty and vulnerability for local communities. Therefore, forest conservation relies on good governance. Good governance is about involving all stakeholders in the management of forests, especially the local communities who are often sidelined and not accounted for in decision-making, although they are the most dependent on the forest for their livelihoods. In forest management, the most important stakeholders are forest communities, government, private sector, and civil society, such as environmental and social NGOs. Forest communities are particularly relevant stakeholders as they depend on forests for their livelihoods and well-being. Community forests are managed by these local stakeholders living inside and nearby the forest. Community forest management relies on the high value that local people give to the diversity of resources and services they obtain from their forests. Such communities do not treat the forest as a quick source of income from timber extraction. Community forestry has demonstrated a successful management regime and a model of good forest governance. Nepal is recognized for over 3 decades of experience in community forest management. We therefore chose Nepal as a pilot country for our action research project to develop forest governance standards. Since good governance is a prerequisite for long-term forest conservation, it is important for the stakeholders to have an effective tool to assess and improve the quality of governance in the forest sector. This allows us to validate and reward good governance while also identifying and addressing bad governance practices. The tool we propose is a quality of governance standard. Creating and using such a standard greatly supports the conservation of forests, as it ensures forest management follows a set of rules agreed upon all stakeholders. A commonly agreed standard can thus help avoid conflict by providing an instrument to harmonize diverse interests. It also helps to define the roles of various stakeholders in the overall management of the forest. A quality of governance standard is a set of norms that have been agreed by stakeholders. A country standard should be context-specific, but it can also be guided by a general framework of good governance. A suitable governance framework was designed by Dr. Tim Catman of Griffith University. It is hierarchical and consists of 2 principles, 4 criteria and 11 indicators. Let's hear what Dr. Catman has to say about the 11 indicators of good governance.
It's like a checklist. Who is included? So inclusiveness. Is the relationship between all the people equal? Does everybody have the resources to actually be involved? Is everybody accountable to each other, and are their activities transparent? When it comes to decision making, are decisions made in a democratic way so everybody has a say? How are agreements reached? Do people use consensus or voting? And then if people can't agree, are there mechanisms for them to settle their disputes?
If these indicators are properly addressed, then they lead to the remaining 3 indicators, which are behavior change that solves existing problems in a durable and sustainable manner. These 11 indicators represent ideal elements of good governance. Your job in establishing a context-specific standard is to find ways to verify the extent to which these elements of good governance are present in forest management of your country. This requires that you engage with all forest stakeholders in a multi-stage process to understand what they see as the key elements of good governance for each of the 11 indicators. These elements we call verifiers. A verifier is a context-specific norm of good governance associated with one of these indicators. For example, for the indicator of transparency, it is important that any action or decision taken can be seen and understood by everybody. Specifically, stakeholders may report that forest management gatherings are open to everybody and held in a public space. Thus, holding open and inclusive forest management meetings becomes a verifier for transparency. The development of the verifiers in collaboration with multiple stakeholders, especially with local people and communities, is the unique feature of the process we used for standard development. I will now guide you through the 7 stages needed to create a quality of governance standard. Central to this process is a multi-level participatory approach that aims to reflect the needs of local communities and other stakeholder interests within the same standard. Let's get started. Stage 1 of creating the quality governance standard is an online questionnaire survey. We need to quickly gain a big picture that includes the diversity of perspectives on forest governance from all stakeholders. The goals of Stage 1 are to identify cross-sectoral viewpoints in your country and internationally, for instance, from 8 agencies working in country. Develop a list of verifiers for each indicator. Develop a database for stakeholders. The survey includes a set of 11 questions, one for each of the 11 quality of governance indicators. We ask what elements exist to ensure good governance or are still required to achieve each indicator. To do this in a cost-effective way, we use an online survey tool such as SurveyMonkey. In Nepal, we obtained 131 completed questionnaires, and from this, we developed a preliminary list of verifiers. To identify a large number of stakeholders at this early stage, you may ask the initial participants to share the survey with other potential respondents. In stage 2, we follow up by conducting interviews with key people representing the diversity of relevant sectors. We ask them the same 11 questions as in stage 1, but here we allow interviewees to elaborate orally on the elements of good governance. This stage offers a better opportunity to incorporate the views of stakeholders who were underrepresented in the online survey, particularly forest users who lack internet access. This also provides a further opportunity to identify additional verifiers. In Nepal, we conducted more than 50 interviews, and the verifiers of good governance obtained in stages 1 and 2 reflect a diversity of individual views. In stage 3, we bring together representatives of all stakeholders to reach consensus on the verifiers by organizing a multi-stakeholder forum. We engage stakeholders in breakout groups to discuss, revise and agree on a final list of verifiers. In Nepal, 35 stakeholders participated in this forum and developed 180 verifiers of good governance. We also ask stakeholders to rank the importance of the 11 quality of governance indicators within their national context. Nepalese stakeholders ranked transparency, inclusiveness, accountability and resources as the 4 most important indicators. At the end of this stage, you will have a set of agreed verifiers. Based on these verifiers, you will now be able to elaborate the governance standard. Basically, you need to transform these agreed verifiers into the key elements of the standard. If necessary, a standards expert may be consulted to support in developing the language of the standard because this can be complex. However, this work should still follow the agreed verifiers. In stage 4, the draft of the governance standard is shared back with the stakeholders by email or post for another round of national consultation. This allows stakeholders to see how the draft standard is shaping up and for them to provide critical feedback and suggestions. Make sure to distribute the standard to all stakeholders, including local communities. We may need the support of local government officials for this. For stage 5, we actually go to the field or to the forest and hold field consultations with the local stakeholders, in our case, local communities. To make the standard relevant and useful at the forest management level, the verifiers need to be refined to be specific enough to apply within particular forest management regimes. In this stage, it is crucial to seek detailed information or evidence for each verifier through focus group discussions. We call this next hierarchical level under each verifier means of verification. It may be impossible to consult the totality of verifiers with local communities, at least initially. For us, community consultation on just 16 verifiers took around 2 to 3 hours. It is thus helpful to first focus on selected verifiers under the indicators that were previously ranked as most important. In Nepal, we held consultations with 4 selected community forest user groups in each district, and we focused on the community forest management regime. Initially, we consulted communities on 16 verifiers for the 4 highest ranked indicators, so 4 for each indicator. And during a second field visit, we consulted on additional 21 verifiers for the remaining 7 indicators, so 3 for each indicator. At stage 6, a workshop with multi-stakeholder experts is held to seek their advice on how to move forward with the draft standard. In the case of Nepal, there were 37 participants representing all stakeholder groups. 2 questions to be addressed during the workshop are: first, how should we finalize the draft standard? For example, should there be a separate national and regime-specific standard, or should there be a hybrid standard that incorporates all aspects? Second, what steps are required to have the standard adopted? In Nepal, the experts recommended that we share the use rights of the standard through a memorandum of understanding with the government, explore harmonization with related standard development processes, relate the standard to monitoring and evaluation of forest sector programs, and develop and test it for different management regimes. Stage 7 is the final stage, and here we hold local stakeholder workshops. We consult with local stakeholders on the final version of the regime-specific governance standard, and we check to make sure that their inputs provided during the field consultations have been properly reflected in the final version of the standard. We explain and demonstrate the use and implementation of the standard so that the local stakeholders and communities are able to take effective ownership of it. Breakout groups are again used to effectively engage stakeholders in consultation on the contents. Then each group reports to the plenary, and the plenary discusses any outstanding issues. Finally, as an outcome of the workshop, we seek endorsement for the standard. At the end of this 7-stage process, you will have created a forestry governance standard document. And this standard will apply within your specific national and local contexts, because it will have been developed with the participation of all relevant stakeholders. Following formal approval of this standard, national and international organizations can use this voluntary standard to assess the quality of governance in specific projects and forest management regimes. Good governance assessment and certification provides confidence on the long-term sustainability of the forest. National programs can reward local stakeholders who achieve good governance in managing their forest, while international initiatives such as REDD+ could provide funds from carbon emissions trading to these communities with the confidence that they have good governance and therefore can be trusted. This reduces the risk for investment in a forest carbon project. Developing a quality of forest governance standard is thus an important step in supporting both communities and countries to sustainably manage and conserve their forests.